Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Protect Black Women Weekend. Before we get started, I want to see who's watching and tuned in with me through the Facebook live stream this evening. Drop a comment, say hello in the comment box, where you're from. Tell us, what does Protect Black Women mean to you? And also share the stream on your Facebook pages. I see you, Dr. Henry. Thank you for joining us this evening, Dr. Henry, who was one of our panelists from the Med Talk. Tanisha Buford, thank you for joining us. Asha, I see you. Nicole Waller, I see you tuning in. Raina, our Civic Engagement Chair, thank you for joining with us. Hello, Queens. Hello. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Jennifer. Thanks for joining with us tonight. Who else tuned in with us? Thank you all for joining. Drop in the comments. I also want you all to share what does it mean to you? What does Protect Black Women mean to you all? I see you, Cecily. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Coletta Daniels. Ashley Jones. Yes, ma'am. We are live. I see you, Lydia. Hello, hello, hello. We are streaming this live through our Memphis Urban League Young Professionals YouTube channel also. So please take the chance and go like and subscribe. That's Memphis Urban League Young Professionals on YouTube. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, MEMULYP on those pages. So please go like and follow us so you can stay up to date on what's going on in the movement. Hello, Shalima, I see you. And if you're interested in learning more about the movement and how you can get involved, please visit our website. That's www.memphysulyp.org to join today. Before we begin, I want to give a very special thank you to our sponsors for our Protect Black Women Weekend, the Cairo Place. Special thank you to Dr. Turner, who was a part of our Med Talk panel last night. Our other sponsors include Verizon, Emmanuel Consulting, who has been the glue for this weekend's events. Thank you, Asha. Thank you to our sponsor, Your Inner Yogi, who will lead our members only yoga class this Sunday. Also, Sugar Shack, thank you for being a sponsor, and we'll continue tonight's conversation after the virtual town hall. Again, tonight's event concludes. When it concludes, please meet us to continue the conversation safely in person at Sugar Shack in downtown Memphis. Memphis Urban League Young Professional members will get free entry and discounts on food orders. So thank you, Sugar Shack, for being one of our sponsors for the weekend. Also, thank you to our sponsor, Mocha Defense, which is a Black woman-owned protective gear company offering a special discount to our Protect Black Women Weekend on self-defense gear. So if you need some gear, go check out their website, which is mochadefense.com. Again, that's www.mocha.defense.com, and use the promo code MULYP for a very special discount for the weekend. Buy your box, protect the Black woman. Again, good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for tuning in with us, and welcome to Protect Black Women Weekend, the virtual town hall event. I am Ashley Hafford, president of Memphis Urban League Young Professionals, and on behalf of our organization, as well as our affiliate, Memphis Urban League, our Memphis Urban League president and CEO, Ms. Tanya Cecily Bayman, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event and to this platform. The theme is simple: protect Black women. The reality is complex. The movement is growing. The demand is real. Protect Black women. We as Black women are creators, nurturers, teachers, visionaries, and backbones for entire movements. Ask Stacey Abrams. Yet, We are undervalued, demeaned, judged, dehumanized, belittled, murdered, hypersexualized, not paid the coins we deserve, told what to do with our own bodies, and constantly subjected to the injustice of the two-front battle we are forced to contend with of sexism and racism in our own communities as well as in society at large. This movement is not about asking men to protect Black women physically, although that's a conversation that needs to happen. This is more so about having equal space, visibility, consideration, and basic human rights, being included in political activism and conversations about changes and improvements needed in our communities. Take Malcolm X's famous speech in Los Angeles in 1962. The most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. He said that 60 years ago, and I feel every bit of that today. When Daniel Cameron read the grand jury ruling in Breonna Taylor's case, in that moment of indescribable hurt, anger, pain that we collectively felt as Black women, I knew in that moment that we needed a series of programming surrounding Protect the Black Women movement. And that's why, as president of Memphis Urban League Young Professionals, I assure you, we are here and we are ready to stand up and stand ready to lead the charge and create the space where women can feel included, heard, and protected. I am so excited about this weekend's events, which began yesterday with Med Talk and continues today with this virtual roundtable filled with my personal collective list of role models, mentors, sheroes, #goals, and change agents with all ties right here in Memphis. Our weekend will continue tomorrow with the Jiu-Jitsu self-defense class and Sunday with members-only events that includes a yoga class so that we can find and center our peace amidst the chaos. And then later on that afternoon, a members only event that includes a different kind of peace. You can visit our website, memphisulYP.org, to learn more about all of our events and to join the movement. Memphis Urban League Young Professionals recognizes it's only by prioritizing us as Black women will we be able to protect us. It's only by standing up for us will we be able to reach the heights that our DNA has already destined for us. It's only by creating a community around this movement will we be able to leverage our collective voices to truly protect us. Thank you again to all of our guests this evening. The town hall will consist of 3 different segments with panelists from similar sectors grouped together for 45-minute segments tonight. We will take questions from the Facebook Live audience, so please drop your comments and questions in the comment box throughout the event, and we'll be sure to pose those questions that you have to our panelists. At this time, we will have Courtney Thomas come to introduce our facilitator for the evening, and again, thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, Ashley, for that introduction. Once again, my name is Courtney Thomas, and I am the Memphis Urban League Young Professional Historian. And I have the pleasure of introducing our facilitator for the evening, Ms. Cheryl Green. Cheryl Green is the owner and founder of Complexity, a consulting company focused on helping leaders, organizations, and people use their collective capacity to solve complex problems. Cheryl has a background in education and has served as a teacher, principal, and district leader in multiple school districts. Her education experience includes working on most teacher and leadership effectiveness projects with the Tennessee Department of Education, Syracuse City Schools, Baltimore Public Schools, Shelby County Schools, and UNO Charter Network in Chicago. She was a founding board member for Freedom Preparatory Academy, has been a grant reviewer for the Walton Family Foundation, sat on charter review panels for the Tennessee Achievement School District, and as of September 2020, the Tennessee Charter Appeals Review Committee. Since 2015, Cheryl has been helping organizations with program planning and implementation, meeting and session facilitation, and organizational development. Complexity's focus is to facilitate teams and coach organizations and leaders through intractable problems. Complexity has worked with a diverse set of clients that include Delta State University, Memphis Music Initiative, the Tennessee Charter School Center, and the Aspen Institute, to name a few. Overall, the work is driven by helping organizations create systematic change, resolve conflict, and help move projects from strategy to action. Cheryl has a Bachelor's of Science in Secondary Education from Alabama A&M University and a Master's of Education from Delta State University, and is certified in the field of human systems dynamics. And with that, I introduce to you our facilitator for the evening, Ms. Cheryl Green.
Thank you, Courtney, and welcome to all of you for evening of really sitting in and understanding, rejoicing, processing, and thinking about what it means for Black women to be protected, to be honored, and to be celebrated as we move forth, especially during these times. And so without further delay, I want to take an opportunity to bring forward our panelists for the evening. All of them are sort of centered in media and communications. And so this evening, we'll hear from 4 people. So Kirsten Cheers, who is the Communication Director for the Shelby County Public Defender's Office. Got Big Sue, who is Vice President of Programming for iHeartMedia. Lori Spicer Robinson, who is founder and CEO of Wonder. Also VP of Diversity and Inclusion with Saks Fifth Avenue. And then Denisha Thomas, who's the news director for Local 24 News here in Memphis. So welcome to all of you. Give a wave or something to our audience. So we'll jump right in. What I'll ask for the audience is that we'll spend some time with the panel, but if you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll sprinkle those questions throughout the conversation, but also have a Q&A at the end of this. And so there are about 3 questions that I'd like to start with the center of this conversation or to begin to frame it. And given that we are in this sort of like awkward virtual environment, what I'll ask is that you'll just unmute and step in when you're ready to speak, and we will work it out from there. And so the first question is, what do you think is one of the most important issues affecting Black women in Memphis? And how can Black women advocate for change needed to better protect us? So I'll repeat that one more time. What do you think is one of the most important issues affecting Black women in Memphis? And how can Black women advocate for the changes needed to better protect us?
I think you asked a question that really requires a lot of thought. Because Black women aren't a monolith, it's hard to say what all Black women need, but particularly in Memphis and dealing with the pandemic, not only do we need survival and to know that we are going to be okay and our families are going to be okay, but I believe Black women want to have the space and the opportunity to excel and to succeed. And I think what's most needed is that support system.
I will pick it up there. First of all, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you MULYP for having me. You know, I think there's going to be a group of folks who come after us who will talk about policies and advocacy and things like that. But when I ran for office in 2015, learning that I believe about 80 to 90% of transportation MATA passengers are not only living in poverty, but most of them are single mothers, Black single mothers. We know, for those of us who have visited cities like Atlanta and DC and New York, how much we don't feel like driving a car. We love to take public transportation just for the heck of it. But and also, it, you know, for us, it saves money. But for those who are living in poverty in our city, and we know that Memphis is a glaring poverty rate, for most of those folks don't have a car. They don't own a car. So if single Black mothers can't get to work on time, and we know we have a huge transportation problem here in the city, if single Black mothers can't get to work on time and they are the major ridership, then that means they can't take care of their families. And we know once you've been too many marks against you at work, you lose your job. So making sure that Black women in our city are able to get to work on time via public transportation, or offering some sort of ridership programs, or you know, in any better policies that would better benefit all of us. But if we make Black women the center of that conversation, it can only turn around beneficial for our city, especially economically, and then socially as well. So.
I would say, as the latest Memphian to leave and then to return back to Memphis, opportunities for advancement. One of the reasons why I left Memphis 5 years ago had nothing to do with the city itself. My family's here, my church was here, my whole support system was here. But in order for me to even be in this current position that I'm in, I had to move several times before someone back in Memphis recognized my potential and my opportunity. So for me, I'm college educated, I'm qualified, I've shown the hard work, but I had to go away for people to be able to appreciate what I brought to this city. And I know that that's not just my story, that's the story of so many Black women in Memphis. Is I have to leave in order to come back, when if I had the chance to just stay here and to help the city grow, who knows where Memphis would be, particularly on the media standpoint.
So Cheryl, I'll jump in and close out that question. Thank you to Memphis Urban League Young Professionals. Very excited to join you all and be a part of this very important conversation. Once a leaguer, always a leaguer. So excited to be back. I would say what Black women need is value, right? I think everything that has been mentioned already is because we suffer from a lack of value. Right? Value to our pockets. When you talk about pay, we definitely are not making as much as our counterparts, and especially not as much as men. And if you know the truth, we show up and we work hard. So we should be paid for that effort and that work. I think, as you mentioned, opportunity, we are not valued the same way. People question us, question our credibility. And we do have to lead to even be seen as someone of importance and of value, and as someone who can be able to ascend to a higher position. I think our health, right? We think we are seen as super women. We wear this cape proudly, but the reality is we're struggling. We struggle like everybody else. We take care of ourselves, our households. We take care of additional family members. And so people undervalue our presence in all of those different settings. And so I think having value and acknowledgement for who we are, what we bring, and what we have brought to the table is something that will really help us move forward.
Yeah, thank you all for your responses. I'll say, Denisha and Lori, both of you sort of talked about, in really a broad view, and I'll summarize it, this whole notion of one, being seen, being acknowledged, being valued for what you bring to the table. And then I'll just add this other word in here that wasn't said, being rewarded for that, being put in position. Can you talk a little bit about, as Black women, what is it that we either need to create or do better so that we are opening up pathways for other Black women?
I will jump in here. I think, and Cheryl, I will say I study this because I'm big on like tapping into a mentorship network of people. I have a kitchen cabinet, as I call it. And I laugh because I had a leader once tell me, and he actually laughed with another leader, and he was like, I don't understand why you need multiple mentors. And I'm like, well, you wouldn't understand, right? Because you're a white man who's been afforded lots of opportunities to ascend, even though you like to share the story of growing up poor. Our story and our experience is not the same. And so I think part of the reason I share that is because I have leaned on these women, but what I have learned is that it took them so much to get to where they are that sometimes they still don't feel like they have arrived. So if you look at a lot of Black women who are at the top, and I'd say generationally, right? Like if you look at Black women who have been in their positions for over 10, sometimes 20 plus years, they had a hard road to get to where they are, but they still don't feel like they have arrived. And so I think that battle, those battle wounds and that struggle to get to their position will not allow them to step aside so that the next person can step up. And I think the other thing is they assume a younger generation of woman or person doesn't want to lean on their knowledge, lean on their understanding, but they want to do it all by themselves in their own way. And there is some truth, I think, in merit in that, because when they started, they wanted to do the same. But I think that also keeps them from lifting up and lifting as they climb. And so that's a challenge, right? I think that's not unique to Memphis, but is definitely a challenge in Memphis. And we have to do more of it, because the only way that we will continue to ascend in leadership and have power and position is to figure out how we mobilize and come together to get to these seats.
I will follow that. I completely agree. I was reading this book by Melissa Harris Perry. We're all pretty familiar with her. She used to be on MSNBC, professor, I think at Wake Forest. She wrote a book called Sister Citizen. And I started the book a few years ago, and I decided to pick it back up, especially in the wake of everything. She talks about this theory called the crooked room theory. And it was a research project that was performed on different military men from all branches or what have you. Wanted to measure almost like the PTSD and how that affected them post-military. So they would sit them in a crooked room with a crooked chair and watch how the military men would adjust themselves. Would they adjust themselves according to the room? Or would they take a step back and say, no, this room is crooked. I need to either not walk in this room or not stay in this room? Or would they adjust themselves according to their environment? And Harris Perry makes the argument that Black women, politically, socially, and culturally, have often adjusted themselves to the crooked room. And instead of taking a step back and saying, oh, the room is crooked, I'm not crooked, but the room is crooked. And when we often, whether it's professionally, politically, the way we form our politics, the way we interact with men, the way we, the way we vote, the religions that we choose, we often view ourselves as crooked, as if there's something wrong with us. And then we walk into these crooked spaces. And when I say crooked, I really don't mean negative. Like that's not the rhetoric that I'm trying to use. But, we'll walk into spaces that have, this is negative, racist policies, or we'll walk into spaces that don't have paid maternity leave, or we'll walk into spaces where, little Black girls will walk into schools and they're disciplined 6 times as high as white girls. And we think it's something wrong with the Black girls, instead of taking a step back and saying, oh, she comes from an adverse childhood, right? She has to deal with emotional trauma. She lives in poverty. So oftentimes we don't allow Black women the opportunity, or we ourselves don't allow ourselves the opportunity to take a step back and to recognize that the society that we live in, the system in which we vote, is crooked, and it's not us. We were not born with shame. We were not born with this guilt. We were not born with these imperfections. You were born with these gifts and these talents. You were born with if you allow yourself, as Lori says, to be surrounded with these mentors and be surrounded with this supportive community, you soon learn, oh my gosh, I really have had these things inside of me all along. But we don't allow ourselves the vulnerability to take a step back and say, hey, there is crookedness around me. Again, not necessarily negative, but things are off, and I have to often adjust to the off things instead of taking a step back and, again, creating my own room, creating my own table. We see Black women are again underpaid, but are the most educated, and so they tend to launch more businesses as other races. And so I think that is a direct testament of Black women taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm going to launch my own thing because these spaces are not conducive to my success. So I would just say, take a step back and recognize we live in a very crooked system. Again, please don't take that as negative, but we do. We live in this crooked room, and Black women have often been raised inside of crookedness without having the opportunity to take a step back and saying, it's the room, it's not me.
Thank you for that. We have a question from the audience that actually aligns with what we're talking about. And Big Sue, I'd like for you to answer this. It sort of maybe a little bit talks about what you entered in with this conversation. So the question is, what does building allyship for Black women look like? And this includes the brothers. So what does building allyship for Black women look like, and includes Black men?
You know, it's interesting that I get that question. And once again, thank you all for the invite. It starts with the consciousness. I mean, we can't ignore what's happened in 2019 and 2020 and in all of time for Black Americans in particular. But that consciousness of reaching out for someone. I think all too often, Black women, we have this stereotype of strength, and I can do it and I can do it. And so often we buy into it. And I think sometimes it goes back to what Kirsten said. Sometimes when you are able to take a look back, you're able to say, okay, I need help. And you can reach out to your kitchen cabinet, as Lori Spicer says. Sometimes it's about not being too proud to ask for the help. And I think sometimes we try to saddle ourselves with so much, and I can do it, and I am the strong Black woman, and I'm, I think being able to admit, hey, I need help, and being able to reach out for those who are, excelling in their field, or just saying, hey, my name is, this is what I do. I mean, building allyship looks like this right here. As far as I'm concerned, all the panelists, y'all, the new besties, So you can feel free to reach out for me after this, as I will be doing the same. But just that consciousness. Stop looking down at your work or looking, tunnel focus, and look around you. Issa Rae said it best. Sometimes we need to network sideways as we get ready to move forward. And that includes the brothers too, to the question.
I'll just say, I think it starts with inclusion. When you start to accept that Black women, in and of ourselves, we are not monolithic. I will also just go ahead and put this out there. I think my sister Jasmine is going to sit on is on one of these. We have to include Black trans women as well. The bigger the army, the better chance you can win the fight. And so if we look to one, embracing all Black women, whether you went to Ivy League, I went to HBCU, you're AKA, I'm a Delta, you see the red. We just have to, you grew up in I grew up in South Memphis, you grew up in North Memphis. I don't always drive to North Memphis, but I will come over there. Y'all got some good fish. I've been there before. So if we really get out of this, well, she's not quite like me, and or she's not from where I'm from, or we don't do politics the same, or if we can all embrace that each and every one of us has the right to live, that each and every one of us has the right to access to opportunity, and we're willing to build a coalition with all Black women. Now, caveat, you have to be careful of, all skin folk ain't my kinfolk. And so there's that as well. But I think if we can kind of get out of this idea of, the perfect Black woman, the strong Black woman, if we can really be inclusive of all type of Black women and broaden your army, you can have better allyship. As far as the brothers, I think it aligns also with men as well. We're not going to throw men away. Sometimes we want to, but we can't. And so they're here. But I think the other piece of that is not to be afraid to challenge one another. We have to be able to, get to the place where we can hold each other accountable and not feel attacked. Accountability is not attack. And if I challenge you on, how you may be excluding certain demographics of Black people, or how you may be aligning yourself with policies or social constructs that are not inclusive and that are dangerous to our community, don't think that I'm attacking you. I am just holding you accountable so we can broaden our community, so we can broaden this support system, and that we can have a stronger allyship, and that we can win these battles.
I think there's room and space to have a whole 2-hour conversation about two things, right? These cross-generational conversations in relationships that keeps coming. It comes up all the time. And then this whole issue, which I think sometimes is the issue around the strength of the Black woman, or the myth of the strong Black woman, however you want to look at that. But I want to shift this to something that's happening right now. And Denisha, I'd love to start with you on this question. We are in the middle of 2 days later of an election. The votes have actually been cast and they're still counting them. Last I checked, I guess 3 hours ago, we still haven't necessarily named a president. It looks like we know who it is based upon the tally, but we haven't named them. So, this still really could go either way. When you think about this election, what are some of the implications that this will have on Black women as we move forward?
Well, I've seen my sister Stacey Abrams all over my timeline today, and it speaks to the power of Black women and when we mobilize people and how much we can mobilize people to get out and vote, but not only get out and vote, but do what needs to be done to make a change. Something that somebody brought up to me back in 2016, that I'm seeing evident in 2020 is the fact that as gloom and doom as we thought it was that night in 2016 when President Trump was elected, how many doors and how many opportunities so many people provided for themselves. How many times people have created these grassroots movements because they were inspired, not based off of a two-party system, but realizing that the power that they have in their own community. The number of jobs that have been created by Black women, the number of political action committees that have been created by Black women has skyrocketed since 2016. And so while there is a lot of uncertainty about what 2021 will bring, I think part of it is Black women will once again rise to the occasion. And it's not just rising to the occasion to save America, but more importantly, to save ourselves. Because who's going to save us if we don't save ourselves? And there's something to be said about how much, if we work together, how much we can accomplish. And so I have hope about what 2021 will bring, despite who may be in the White House. If anything, I think the conversation is now shifting to the power we have in our own communities and the changes that we need to make in our own communities. The federal government will do what the federal government does, but we can make a difference in our own local communities now.
Sure, I'll just add, Black women, we rise out of strife, and we've been doing that for generations, right? When challenge presents itself and everybody is in chaos and going crazy trying to figure out what to do, we come together, we strategize, and we make it happen. And so I think what we see from Stacey Abrams, let me not refer to Stacey as if we're friends, but we will be friends one day, is that she did that. And then she didn't leave anyone behind, right? I think people left her behind when she was at her lowest. And she said, no, we're going to come together. I'm going to call on you when you didn't call on me. And we're going to make this next election have a different outcome. And we see that play out. And so I think one of the strengths that people overlook for Black women is strategy, right? Black people always get the comment that we're not good at strategy, we're not good at mobilizing, we're not good at coming together. But that's our bread and butter. Women, Black women, we do that well. And so when we pull people to the table, we're pulling everybody to the table because we're looking for change and outcomes. And we know, as Kirsten said, that involves inclusion. Allyship is like, we need all voices at the table. It doesn't matter your background, where you're coming from. And so, like Denisha said, we have to be hopeful. We've been hopeful for years. We are the masters of resilience. And I think that resilience is driven by our hope. Hope for better for ourselves, for our kids, for the Black men who sometimes forget us. I won't go back to that question. But I think we have to remain hopeful as we move forward.
I love that you're mentioning Stacey Abrams. I just want to remind people in the audience again to ask any questions that you have of the panelists. She's done a lot. I won't even go down a list of things that she's done since she actually ran her own race for governor in Georgia. But some of the things I've been seeing in social media today, which I probably shouldn't look at, has been around, it's absolute, right? On one end, they applaud her. She is great. She's done this. On the other end, it's she's done this, but, right? She had this help, or it's because of these things, or she carried us on her back. Never any mention of her education, her experience, her accolades. And so we've talked about this a little bit, but when it comes to Black women, you know, I feel like some of the things you guys have brought up is this whole ideal of not being acknowledged for what we bring to the table, but then having to go out and put all the sweat, blood, and tears into the work. As we're starting to acknowledge this even more, how do we respond to these things when we know that we are, and I'll just tell the truth, we know we are carrying teams, we are carrying organizations, we are carrying water for a whole lot of people and initiatives and ideals, and then are sort of left behind when it's time to be promoted, time to be acknowledged. So how do you respond when these things happen, or what is it that we should do as Black women during these times, during these moments?
I think probably the quickest way to say it is to make sure that we're advocating for ourselves. I think so often we don't stop to say, hey, look at what I did. Because as women, period, I just don't think we're wired that way, because we see whatever the situation is an objective, and we are about focusing and getting it done. We're not about stopping. We're not about celebrating. We're not about look at me, because there's still work to be done, because we are, you know, again, creating a situation for ourselves and for our families. But I think when you understand that Black women move the culture, and so many people are looking at us, to see, you know, what we're interested in. When you think about just culture, period, I think it's up to us to continue to celebrate each other, just like it's us to build our allyship with each other.
I agree. That's a hard question, to be quite honest with you, because I think Black women, we are very resilient and we're very steadfast, and we know how to take the punches and just keep going and keep riding. And I think we do that well. However, or not however, in addition, we do need to make sure that we have those spaces where we can just cry. That has been, I mean, I go to therapy, right? And that has been the greatest investment that I have ever made. And I encourage everybody, find you a church and therapy. I'm grateful to have both spaces. But I mean, honestly, like if I didn't have, again, that allyship and that supportive circle and that circle of friends of fellow Black women who can just watch me at my weakest so that I can go out here in the world and not let the world see me sweat. But I can sweat in front of my friends. It makes the battle a little, you can go another day, you know? So I would say, you know, make sure you have you a space to cry. You know, we talk about Black men don't want to show emotion. Black women kind of don't like doing that either. You know, have you ever tried to get your mama to have a real conversation about how she feels? It is like pulling teeth. So I, you know, my thing is, I have to make sure that, you know, the people who are closest in my life, my small circle of friends, that they really see the real Kirsten, and that they know the real Kirsten, and that they allow me to be, you know, I hate to use the word weak. I would rather use the word vulnerable, because we need those spaces. We need those spaces to be vulnerable and to just unload and offload, and then walk away and wake up the next morning and take a shower and wake up and get into the office and act like ain't nothing happened. So create those spaces where you can be vulnerable so you can keep on going.
So we have another. Oh, go ahead, Lori. Mm-hmm.
Sure. I was just going to add that, you know, in your question, you mentioned opportunity shaming, right? Like that's what's happened with Stacey, and people are ignoring her merit. And your question was like, what do we do? I think she has modeled the way, right? We can show you better than we can tell you. And so we show up and deliver. And I think that is what we have to continue to do, that despite the lack of acknowledgement or being ignored or undervalued or forgotten, that at the end of the day, we know we have to pour into each other so that we know our worth and our value, but that we continue to deliver, because at the end of the day, I think we carry it all. We carry this world, as Sue, I have to not call her big, as Sue mentioned, right? That we set the culture because we are the culture. And so in so many different avenues, we are it. And so I think as we look ahead to what's to come, you will see, I feel like 2018 was that year of the woman. Every year is really the year of the woman, but the Black woman is rising. And so people have to watch out because we don't have time to talk to you about it. We're just going to show you better than we can tell you.
And can I say one more thing? Like, going back to what Lori said about Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams had an election stolen from her. Remember, Kamala Harris was running for president and she couldn't meet. So it was like, yep, she couldn't
Say
meet.
it. Bloomberg called her out.
Come
Go
on,
ahead.
like all types of folks. We ain't gonna go down the list, but all of those folks made an effort to, because when she jumped in, and we can talk policy later, but when she jumped in, everybody said, oh, she is the most qualified person for this job. Kamala was running for president and she could not meet, I think, the fundraising threshold, which again, we can talk about later. I thought it was a little silly. She could not meet the DNC's fundraising threshold, which made her drop out. But the mudslinging, the media, the way that they treated her, we talk about the Black women's perception in media. She got all of that, and from all sides, including from Black men and some Black women. But guess what? Again, old girl, I think it goes back to Lori's point. She strategized, and then bada bing, bada boom, baby girl finna be the VP. Like, so you can't be president, but we'll take VP right now, and then later on we can talk about being president. But I think there was strategy, and of course there was strategy in that. She didn't just, Joe didn't just call her one day and say, hey, no, she went through a process, she aligned herself. But the idea that she or Stacey or Hillary Clinton, right? I sit back and think all the time now, I'm like, dang, Hillary was nowhere near this. Like, Hillary could not get to where Joe is right now. That is absolutely crazy. But in the case of Black women, when we look at Black women and we take those punches, it is in those trenches and in those valleys that we really do strategize, and then we come back stronger.
I appreciate you guys for that. Yeah, so much that could be said to that about playing the long game and operating in silence, and allies who are with us and those that should be with us and that are not. I want to get this last question in, and it's a great one. And so the question is, what issues do you see specifically in the media now that get in the way for Black women feeling protected? So what issues can you see identify in the media that get in the way or pose a challenge for Black women feeling protected?
I'll make this quick. I think what we saw this summer with a multitude of Black women, but what we saw happen with, and some people may call me silly, Meg Thee Stallion, her incident, the way that we saw people respond to her. People to this day still don't believe what happened to her. And whether it did or it didn't, what that says, the rhetoric of that tells Black women that no matter what happens to you, we won't believe you. And we aren't going to give you the space to be a victim. Now, we don't want to talk about weakness and all that stuff. And I know we don't want to play victim. We are victors and X, Y, and Z. But my mom says a thing, you don't have to claim it if you can name it. If you can name it, then you can move on. And a lot of times we won't allow ourselves to just name the abuse that happens to us. And the media plays a role in that. And so, some people say, she came out with WAP and then she came out with whatever. But if this had happened to Kylie Jenner, who was there that night, Tory Lanez wouldn't be on live anymore. There would be, investigation out the wazoo. But we see that, and when I think media, I also think social media and just the influx of opinions from multiple people who do not give Black women the space when something has happened to them for them to be vulnerable and say, this has happened to me. So, Black women aren't believable. And that often plays out in media, traditional and in digital media spaces.
So I'll talk from a strategy standpoint on the TV side of things. From what I've been told, I'm not sure how true it is, I am the first Black female news director in this entire market. Memphis, Tennessee has been Black males, but there's not a one, from what I'm being told. as the first Black female news director in this market. And so what that says to me is there's not been anyone at the helm helping to change what is the narrative of Black women in the media, to call things out as though they are, right? Instead of just kind of sitting by because there is someone who doesn't look like us calling the shots and saying, well, no, this is the angle that we're going to cover. And no, this is what's really trending on social media, instead of saying, well, what's the real cause of that? Can we get to the root of that? If Megan Thee Stallion was afraid to talk about it, is there a deeper issue that we need to address in the media about why women are afraid to speak out against their attackers? That's a story that could have been told out of that. And had I been here, probably would have been a story. But I can't speak about what I wasn't a part of. But what I'm saying is there's still not enough opportunities where we are in these seats helping to call the shots. And not only just call the shots, because this is not about a power thing. It's about helping to teach people that while you may see it this way, other people see it a totally different way. And we do not want to perpetrate any stereotypes at all. And once you get kind of caught up in the drama of it all, and we're not getting to the facts and to the heart of the story, that's what we're doing. And so from my standpoint, there's just not enough of us in those leadership roles in the media that can call those things out. If that were to happen and we had people to support us when we are in those positions and not make us feel like we're down or we're stupid or, well, you're pushing an agenda. Well, no, I'm pushing the truth. And this is the truth from my perspective. This is my perception. This is my reality. And this is a reality for so many other women who look just like me. So for me, the challenge really is about the fact that there's not enough of us helping to drive the boat of what's in the media in the first place.
So we're about roughly 3 to 4 minutes before the beginning of the next panel. At some point, we'll transition for the next group of women to come and join us. But before we do that, and as we're sort of in this interim space, one, if something happens abruptly, I want to make sure I thank all of you for being here. So Kirsten, Sue, Denisha, Lori, congratulations, Denisha. Just thank you so much for joining. Thank you for lending your voice, and thank you for the work that you do. I mean, I know most of you, and I know that this work that you do is not about you alone. It is also about community. So gratitude for that. But before we leave, are there any parting words or bits of wisdom or any questions you may have of each other that you want to just put out here before we... Okay, so as you give final thoughts, we'll have you step down virtually to give final thoughts. So I want to open up the space right now for any final thoughts or things you want to say as we close out this session.
Kirsten, we waiting on you. Come on.
I was sitting here like, in conclusion, no. So again, thank you all so much. To be honest, I am so excited. I think this is the most exciting time for Black women to be a Black woman. Not just because, Stacey Abrams has done a great job, but honestly, when I saw a video on Twitter of Black women ballot counters in, I think, Savannah, Georgia, or Fulton County, somewhere like that. And the room was full of Black women. And so they all looked tired. They all looked hungry. And it was like 12 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning. I just want to encourage us that we have been great all along. And the moment that you are born into purpose and you are born into greatness. Most of the time, we are standing in a crooked room, sitting in crooked chairs. And then we like to believe that it is us who is crooked. I would encourage you to just take a step back and realize that the spaces in which we occupy mostly professionally, politically, culturally, socially, even medically, when we go to visit the doctor, we are usually in a crooked room that already has negative perceptions of us. And so I encourage you to take a step back and realize that those rooms, these systems are crooked. You're straight and you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. God bless.
I'll jump in next, and I do want to say hello to Commissioner Sawyer. I know she's going to be joining the panel, and she said something on Twitter after the election that is still sitting with me. One of the toughest things to see as a Black woman, and sometimes I have this saying that I say, when I see something negative, I say my Black woman hurts. Like it's, almost like it's like another body part. It's like my Black woman is hurt. I don't want to talk. But Commissioner Sawyer, she tweeted something about looking at the election results and looking at how close this election is really telling to know that there's nearly 70 million people in this country for whom racism isn't a deal breaker. That hurts. And that for me was a real reminder of, okay, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of each other. There's no relief coming from anywhere. It is on us. And yes, it is more work, but it is the hard work. So when I spoke on being conscious earlier, it's about being conscious about reaching out for one another, even if it's just a random, hey, are you okay? And being able to say, hey, do you have time to hold this? I think Kristen did an amazing job of talking about knowing when it's okay to shut down, knowing when it's okay to cry, and having that space to be vulnerable and being able to identify your support group. That's where we recharge, and so I would say to Black women, continue to look for each other. I had a moment earlier this year and I almost felt ashamed because I was like, okay, hey, I'm looking for an XYZ. And it took so long for me to say, is there a sister that does this? So it's just one of those things that I think my parting words is I think we need to continue to look to each other. And I am so glad that you all are having this conversation tonight. And thank you so very much for allowing me to be a part of it. And I can't wait to see the rest of it. Thank you, Cheryl, Denisha, Lori, Kirsten, and everybody. Thank you so much. To the Memphis Urban League Young Professionals, I appreciate you guys.
And then there were three. So I'll be brief. I think this is an excellent conversation, dialogue. Love sharing this space with you ladies. And I think as we talk about protecting Black women, it starts with us, right? We cannot assume or allow anyone else to take the position to protect us. That is our work to do. We don't know what the future holds, but I think what has fueled us in years prior is hope, right? And that we are the hope, we are the change that we have to instill in our communities. If for nothing else, our kids, the generations that come after us, really need us to take the reins and create a different world, a different space, and reimagine all of these things, all of these constructs and policies so that we can have a new way. I think as we talk today, we've talked about lack of acknowledgement, being forgotten. But again, we work in silence sometimes because that is what's required of us so that at the end of the day, we can deliver results for change. And so I encourage everyone to lean on their fellow sister. If you don't have a sister to lean on, you find one. We're a pretty communal group, so just reach out and make a friend and connect. And then pull each other up when there are opportunities and you're stretching your mind and figure out who should be in this seat. Think about a Black woman who should be in that seat. Are they ready? Sometimes, no, we're not always ready for that, but it's part of the job is learning on the job, right? And so trust us, trust that we can deliver. And I appreciate Memphis Urban League for inviting me. Always excited to be part of the league. And thank you, Cheryl, for hosting us. Congrats to you, Denisha. Very excited to have you back in the city in this leadership role and excited to be with everyone that was on the panel. So, hey, Tammy. Anyway, thank you all. Talk soon. Bye.
And I'll give a quick soundbite because I'm a producer at heart, so I know it's important to keep this stuff tight. But I would just say that remember, Black women, that we are the change that we already know we need and the change that we want to see. So don't let anyone deter you from that. Continue to lean on your sisters, continue to lean on yourself. There's something about that inner strength that we possess that is so amazing and so transformational. So with that being said, Black women, we rock, and can't nobody do it like we can. Thank you, Memphis Urban League Young Professionals, and thank you, Cheryl, for letting us all participate. It was a great panel, and I'm so excited to be back in the city and so excited to tell your stories, Black women. So that's what we're here to do.
All right, thanks again. Wonderful conversation with women who are representing media here in the city. And to Sue's point, just consider all of them your best friends, your old best friends, current best friends, new best friends. Connect and engage. We want to shift now and begin bringing up our next set of panelists. These panelists represent pretty much people who are elected officials and those who happen to operate within the field of law. And so we'll continue this conversation now. I want to give a disclaimer before I start calling them up. Usually I like to have an opportunity to know exactly the names that people want to be called. And so I will apologize beforehand, before they get here. If I mispronounce a name or I call you by a name that you don't want to be called, please correct me when you come into the room. And so we will start bringing them up one by one. First, we have Jane Chandler, Municipal Court Judge here, Memphis and in Shelby County. We have Commissioner Tammy Sawyer, representing District 7. We have Amber Sherman with the Tennessee Young Democrats National Committee, also Vice Chair of the Young Democrats of America, Women's Caucus, and the first Vice President of the Shelby County Young Democrats. And we have Attorney Carlisa Shaw, who is also a community advocate. So good evening. Want to wave to all of you ladies. I want to confirm also that I got your names right. And is there anything else that you would like to be called on this evening in this conversation before we get started? All right, I'm gonna go with it. So let's start sort of where the last group left off. We started digging a little bit into the election that isn't over, and talking about the role of Black women. And so we have, you know, Stacey Abrams, who over the past, I think, 5 to 6 years, actively went out and got, what was it, 400,000, something like that, 400 to 800,000 people registered to vote in the state of Georgia. We have Simone Sanders, who's sort of played background a little bit with Biden's campaign. We also have a Black woman who played an important part in the campaign of Bernie Sanders. Whether you like her or not, she still was in that role. And so when we think about Black women and how we've worked in this election to push some things forward, what do you think this says about Black women and the implications that this may have on what it is that we do in politics moving forward from here? And again, just open your mics and speak at will.
Okay, I'll go. I think one of the biggest implications is that Black women take on a lot of the blunt of racism and racist actions in America. And America still isn't safe for Black women, of course. So I think the biggest implication is that it's not only an issue, but we also have an outgoing president who has really normalized racist behavior. And so it's more bolder than ever. And I think that we're going to have to face that and how to deal with that.
First, hey everyone. Hi Cheryl. Thanks so much for having us. The last panel was phenomenal. It was a joy to watch. I am cheesing because all of this Black girl magic, needed it this week. So grateful for it. When I first started seeing the flyer being posted, I was like, yes, yes, yes. And Carlissa calling it shea butter, smelling like shea butter in that flyer. I was like, I can't wait for tonight. And I rarely, I can't stand Friday night panels, but I am here and have watched the whole thing. So I love this and I needed this in my soul because it is hard to watch Black women get congratulated and thanked for something. But at the same time, 4 years ago, we were thanked for this. 4 years ago, everyone was saying, trust Black women, thank Black women, when we flipped out Doug Jones into office, right? Trust Black women has been trending for almost half a decade now. And yet and still, we are still, as was shared in the last panel, the most impoverished, the most likely to receive domestic abuse, the most likely to be sexually assaulted. I mean, 2 hours ago, a white man decided that he was going to call me a fat lady on Facebook and say the fat lady is singing. So, Biden's about to win. We are continuously attacked for opening our mouths, and yet we continue to show up. And it's because of our dedication to the community. And someone on Twitter said today, you cannot thank Black women for saving you, white people, because we didn't come here to save you. We came here to save ourselves. And that's why I'm getting so much joy for this panel, because we're showing up for ourselves and for each other. And the rest of the country is benefiting as a result. But I think it's going to have to be all eyes on us. And Judge Jane can share about like the attacks that generationally for years we've gone under, since Ida B. Wells to Judge Chandler's generation to our generation. Anytime we open our mouths and dare to stand up for what Black women need, what Black families and communities need, including Black men, we are constantly physically and emotionally and mentally under attack. And that's not going to change with Joe Biden.
Right. And there's talk about Stacey Abrams. And first of all, let me say thank you for allowing me to be on this panel. I really appreciate it. And Stacey Abrams, she could have used her unsuccessful challenge and looked at it as a failure, but she didn't. The fortitude of Stacey Abrams to do what she did. And, she did not go crawl under a rock. She got out there and worked. And that's what we as Black women have to do. Instead of, looking at things and say, oh, it's too hard and giving up. And she worked and worked and worked. And that's one thing that we have to continue to do, is not just work for ourselves, but work for the betterment of everyone. The people might look at it as a failure, but I look at it as fortitude and strength. Fortitude and strength.
So I guess I'll add, and again, thank you. I have all the sentiments of all the other panelists. This is just good. Like the flyer was just so dope to me. I said, this flyer feels good. And just seeing a lot of familiar faces, I think that Black women have always been doing the work. We've been working, y'all. We work harder, longer than anybody else in this country, and always have. I think that we are getting comfortable with celebrating each other in ways in which we haven't seen previously. So when I scroll my timeline, seeing who's celebrating Stacey Abrams, it's Black women. We are finally to the point where we're saying, girl, you doing it. Girl, I see you. Girl, I appreciate you. Girl, I acknowledge you. We're celebrating each other, and that's what's giving the noise. Nobody else is still celebrating us, and that's okay. Because in this space, I'm learning that it's better for me to be celebrated by my sisters than anybody else. And so a pat on the back from my sisters, I'm happy with that. And learning how to be more vocal with the girl I see yous is something that we have to continue to do and continue to protect each other, because I don't see nobody else protecting us. I don't see nobody else celebrating us. I don't see anybody else acknowledging us. And we have to do that for each other.
A couple of things were said that already have just shook me to my core. So one thing, Commissioner Sawyer, just even the short story you just told about someone saying to you the fat woman is singing, I think is absolutely horrible and crude. I shouldn't apologize to you, but I am. It's absolutely disrespectful and shouldn't happen. And then Amber, you said America still isn't safe for Black women. And when you said that, I felt that. The whole construct of America is designed to kill us and destroy us. So knowing that, what is it that we need to do to feel safe in a country that isn't safe for us? How can we do that for ourselves?
Okay, I'll hop in. I will hop in and just say that one of the things that I have seen growing is Black women are arming themselves. You know, for a long time, 1A First Amendment rights have generally been thought of a white man's game. But I am watching more and more sisters getting armed. I'm armed for the first time. I've had to have private security frequently over the last 5 years. In office 2 years, and because of activism the years before that. And every time someone would say, get a gun, you know, we're Southern Black women. And I'd be like, oh no, I'm not supposed to have a gun. I don't need a gun. My daddy's gonna take care of me. Whatever guy I'm dating right now is gonna take care of me. And the reality is that when I started seeing that there's a shortage on bullets, that we are like that gun companies are overproducing right now and selling out, who are they? Who's gonna be the target of that? Black families, Black people. And a lot of Black women, you know, especially when we reach a certain level in life, when, you know, education wise, professional wise, we're by ourselves. And we need to be able to protect ourselves. You know, the age of chivalry, I can't even say it, it's so far gone. You know, and so I do recommend. London Lamar is actually working with Benny Cobb to do a Black women's safety class on gun safety. I've worked with Benny on the same thing, and there's a lot of stuff on social media, ladies. I would just recommend having something in your house. I never would have said this before. I voted, you know, to keep gun shows from happening at you know, the Agri Center, and I stand by that. But I also say get legal and get a gun, and be safe, and lock it up.
I think it, and I agree with you, Tammy, as far as utilizing, you know, that avenue, because I recall when I had someone coming by my house, and they had a long lens camera, and they were, you know, were focused on my home, and I called the non-emergency number, and the officer said, "Oh, it's just a tourist just looking at your house." But then I'm an elected official, I'm a judge. It could have been someone who was pissed off. You know, I don't know who it was, but they didn't even want to check it out. And my position was that I'm going to protect my family. This is my home at all costs, and I'm going to do that. And I'm a licensed, have the lifetime carry permit, and I'm going to protect my family. Because it's one thing the courthouse and out in public, but when you come to my home, that's too far. They've gone too far. But back to the other question about how can Black women protect themselves and protect each other. I know in my last election last year, I felt like I was somewhat alone, except, you know, thank you, Carlissa Shaw, for your support, and all those that supported me, and Commissioner Sawyer. And it's like some people think they have arrived, and since they've arrived, they don't feel like they have to help in the fight to protect other people. They think that their silence will protect them. But what they don't realize is that when they see someone else, another Black woman being mistreated, stepped on, that just because it's not them right then, their turn is coming. So for me, the fight was, you know, even though I had a whole lot of people and I thanked them, but for me, my peers, my fight was mine. And
So I'll good. I didn't know you're continue.
No, my fight,
That was me talking.
Yeah, my fight is mine. But until we come together to protect one another, and we don't really sometimes don't do that if you aren't part of the clique. I think sometimes people feel like like I said, they've arrived, that they're comfortable in their positions, and they don't want to step out, and they don't want to be vocal. They don't want to speak out when they see an injustice, when they see a wrong, because they think that it will impact them. they become complacent and comfortable in their assimilations with people, and they will not be protected because
I
at the
want
end
to
of
piggyback off that point, Judge, because I definitely see you there, but I will raise you. In my adult life, I am learning how to be vocal for myself and others. And so, to a point where I always felt like I was stifled in the things that I could say. And I felt like I couldn't say certain things because I don't know how people are going to perceive it. And I'm finding my voice. And for me, protecting Black women looks just like that. It looks like verbal advocacy. And so a huge thing that I'm passionate about is protecting Black women autonomy when it comes to birthing children. Because I, along with everybody I know who's had a baby, has had the same situation where I go to the hospital and a nurse or a doctor tells me I have to have an emergency C-section or I have to have this procedure done. And I can't understand why. And when I was actually 6.5 months pregnant, I had a nurse tell me that I would have to have an emergency C-section. And I was like, why? And that was truly the first time that I was able to advocate for myself, because I was like, I'm not having a C-section today unless someone could explain to me why I'm having a C-section. But I only was able to advocate for myself because my friend had the exact same situation happen months earlier and birthed a 1-pound baby, and nobody even explained to her why she had a C-section. And so a lot of us are just now getting our voice that people have to answer questions. People have to now, we're going to have a dialogue about this. And so protecting myself, especially when it comes to my health, it literally is just advocating for myself and advocating for my sisters and informing and educating each other. So I tell anybody, if you're having a baby, where's your doula? Do you have one? If not, I have a whole list of people that you can talk to, because you have to have an advocate. You have to have someone to advocate for you, and you have to be willing to advocate for yourself. And so for a lot of us, protecting ourselves looks like just opening our mouths and being comfortable and opening your mouth.
Right. I don't know if you read Bakari Sellers' book or if you've heard him talk about his wife, Ellen, who was pregnant with twins, and she was going through some changes. And they had one obstetrician, but at some point they changed because she wanted an obstetrician who looked like her, who understood exactly what you just said. Because it was found that Black women were most times losing their children. I had a friend call me earlier today, not call, she sent me a text and she said, please pray for me. She 8 months pregnant, and she said they can't find a heartbeat, and I don't want to believe it. And my first thought went back to Bakari's book when he was talking about his wife, because they ended the relationship with the white doctor that they had, and they got the doula, they got the Black obstetrician, someone who knows the plight of Black women. And I just hope that my friend is okay, because she didn't want to accept the fact, but it comes from what you were saying and how we don't get the proper care that we need. And as far as you said it right, we have to protect one another. We have to educate each other. And I admire Ellen and Bakari for saying, it's nothing against you, but I want someone who understands and who will save me, who will save my babies. And she has 2 healthy twins. So that's
I'll
so.
jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
No.
Well, also,
Amber, let's go to Amber.
okay.
I want to grab a question from the audience.
Okay. Well, also I want to thank Memphis Urban League for having this event. I'm always down to hang out with bomb Black women. I'm really glad you got reelected, Judge Chandler. Tell your daughter I said hey. I think the best way to protect Black women is to protect our peace. I tell people, I've been telling them a lot since the pandemic began. Like, the last thing I was going to do is let y'all stress me out, because I feel like as soon as uprisings and revolutions start happening, people look to Black women, which is also unfair to like completely depend on me to save you and bring you Black liberation. So I started doing yoga, and I do it every day for 15 to 30 minutes. I started doing meditation. I started practicing mindfulness. I started going to therapy twice a week. because we also live in a society that doesn't even censor like the type of content we put out, like constantly posting about Black death, posting like these very viral videos of me watching a Black person die does nothing for my mental health but stress me out. And Black women have some of the highest numbers for high blood pressure and dying from stress. And I refuse to let that be me. So I think that's the best thing I can do for myself is protect my own peace so that I can even function in the world without losing my mind because I'm watching people die every day.
Amber.
That's a message.
All right. I was about to say that's a whole nother panel discussion about care and wellness and protecting peace, and also liberation and mental health. So much in there. We have a question from the audience. I'd look, Attorney Shaw, you actually talked about this a little bit. I'd like to start with Commissioner Sawyer on this question and see if anyone else has something that they would like to add to it. But the question is a powerful Black successful woman, and women, how should young Black women advocate for themselves without being seen as the angry Black woman?
Well, as the resident angry Black woman in Shelby County, I don't know if I have an answer for that. But I think that I go in knowing that whatever I say, whatever I write, however I vote, that there are people who are going to think like that. And I think that we give it power when we are concerned about it. Hell yes, I'm angry. I stay mad all day. My mom would be like, "Can you have a seat? What you mad about today?" I'm mad about the world. I'm mad about the lack of change. I'm mad about the emotional and mental cost of this work. I stay angry, and I also stay motivated, and I also stay dedicated. So for me, it's not about how do I convince these other people to keep from thinking I'm an angry Black woman, because at this point I've just accepted it. This summer, a commissioner tried to tell us that that we hated the police, and I told her to shut up and vote. I knew what was going to happen. I knew what I was doing. Shut the hell up and vote. Stop talking to me, as the kids would say. Stop talking to me. Yes, that's the angry Black woman trope. And somebody wrote on Facebook to the chairman at the time, "Are you going to censor her?" I wish he would have, because then he would have got all these angry words. And I think that even though there's an emotional cost, because I sound right now real, it's a lot of bravado I'm speaking with. There is an emotional cost because I go home, I feel lonely, I question myself. I'm like, why can't I just get along with people? I would get invited to more stuff, but I wouldn't feel good about myself. I got elected off a promise to be a change maker, to fight for Black people. Every election speech I ever gave, Black people were front and center. And that is isolating work. So if they think I'm angry and Black, hell yeah, I'm angry and Black. And I'm a woman. And at this point, there's nothing I can say to white supremacy to make me think anything else. And I'm going to keep being me.
And it's not just white supremacy, it's other people too. So the thing is, you have to be true to yourself. I remember when I was in leadership Memphis, and I stood up, we were having some kind of play, whatever it was. And I asked my classmates, I said, "What do you see when you look at me? What do you see when you look at me?" And somebody said they saw an angry Black female blaming the white man for their predicament in life. And I'm like, and you know what, Tammy, it could have been your dad who stood up and somebody paced. I don't know who it was, but they paced, and then they finally spoke up and said, "The question she asked you is, what do you see when you look at her? When I see her, I see someone, I probably had on some jeans and a t-shirt and Black hair and some eyeglasses. That's what I see. How do you see an angry Black woman blaming the white man for their predicament in life?" And it's just frustrating because regardless, as you said, Commissioner Sawyer, it doesn't matter what you do. People are going to think one way or another. So as long as you're true to yourself, because I'm true to myself and I rest well and I'm so peaceful and blessed. And I just go about my business enjoying my blessings. And I try not to give, as far as violating codes or violating any ethical rules, anybody reason to mess with me. But I'm going to speak my truth and remain true to myself. And if somebody wants to call me angry or whatever they want to say, that's their opinion. And I just keep going.
Yeah, I
So,
agree with
Amber,
both
why
of
we
y'all
always jumping
actually.
at the same time?
Because she was trying to say what I'm going to say before I get to say it. Go ahead, Carlissa.
No, I was going to piggyback off of what Amber said previously, is that I too used to be angry all the time, like Tammy, until like last year. And I was like, I'm too angry. I'm tired of being angry. You hear me? I'm tired. So I'm going to do me some yoga. I'm going to practice me some mindfulness. I'm going to sip me some tea every single morning when I wake up. I'm going to talk to my God every single morning when I'm not angry anymore. And I actually posted a legal analysis on Facebook of the Breonna Taylor jury indictment foolishness, and it actually went viral. And I responded to, say, about 2,000 angry white people. I had time, y'all. I don't know what I was doing. I had time that day. And I was real nice to every one of them. Actually, all of them were like, hey, Bob, hey, Sarah. And I responded to them all very nicely. And I think it's because of that mindfulness and that peace and that taking care of myself piece, but also because I'm right. Like, I have educated myself enough on this topic. I have looked at the facts of this case so much. I have read everything that I could possibly read on these Al Gore internets. And I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that attorney general did not do his job. I could have told you before the press told you that he did not present the facts to the jury, the grand jury, the way that they were supposed to. I knew that. So you can't argue with me about this on this Facebook status. And I'm not going to get angry, because I can have a real conversation with you about the facts, the law, my opinion, my legal opinion, and what happened in that case. And I'm going to do it real peacefully, because I did my yoga this morning and I drank my tea and I talked to my Lord and I did, I'm good. But that is a part of like truly calming yourself down, trying not to let all the stuff that's happening in this world be a part of your world. And when you respond to people, just give them people the facts. Just tell them the facts the way that you see it, based upon the research that you've done, and real calmly and very coolly tell them that they're very, very wrong in their analysis of the situation.
Carlissa better than me, because I don't argue on the internet for free. But
it was just that day. I don't know why I had time today. I'm going to tell all the white people why they're wrong. I'm going to tell every single last one of them, hey, Bob, you're wrong about this. No, she got murdered and this is why. Yep, we're all very sure.
Black people too, as Judge Jane said, because we need to be telling ourselves.
It was quite a few of those too. Hey, y'all.
I mean, I think I am a young Black woman, so I don't know how I would tell other young Black women, but I don't believe in not being angry or caring about what people think when they see me, because I'm going to be this exact same person every day. I wake up with this afro and this t-shirt. I don't believe in being a different person. I feel like the society my mom grew up in was that kind of person. She grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and she tried to instill those kind of things in me of like how I should walk into rooms, and I hated that, and I didn't believe in any of it, because I don't believe in making myself into somebody that I'm not. And if people want to see me as angry, they're going to see me as angry regardless of what I say, how I look, how I acted. It doesn't matter, because people have their own perceived notions of you as a person. And so I'm just going to walk in a room and be me regardless. And if I am angry, you're going to know that I'm angry. And if I'm not, you might perceive it as angry, but I won't care. I'm still going to talk. I want to cuss, my bad. I'm still going to say what I want to say.
It's Friday. It's a safe space. We should be out anyway. So I want to follow up on that, right? Because all of you are established women. All of you are in positions where you actually have coins to spend, right? In a symbolic sense. You can spend some stuff and then not come back on you. In ways sometimes it could be damaging. But in speaking to a young Black woman who's sort of fresh in her career, a year, 2 years out of college, just starting and seeing some things happening, coins, some old stuff from a while ago, and seeing some things happening, how do they navigate spaces when they are young in their career, trying to establish themselves and pretty much vulnerable and at risk? Can they have the same tone, the same approach when they see something that's happening wrong, or should they go another way until they get a little bit more established?
So as a young person who was very, very vocal at a firm that did not want me to be as vocal, and so I was constantly posting, juvenile court got me messed up and got my client messed up today because they did X, Y, and Z, and they gave them white kids community service and they wanted my client to do X, Y, and Z. No, we're not going to do that. And I was constantly being reeled in by my firm. And so eventually we just had to have a come to Jesus meeting with, hey, I understand what you're saying. And I understand that that's not how people typically operate, but this is how I'm going to operate. And just find a space where you feel comfortable. Because again, it's one thing for you just to be angry and venting on the internet, but also everything that I post then and now was intentional. So again, before the Department of Justice came and told us that our juvenile court was racist, I was already posting on the internet. I didn't need a study to show me that either. And so this is not what I feel or me overreacting. No. I witnessed what the Department of Justice found. I already knew that was occurring. And so I'm only going to be in spaces that allow me to speak. And when I've had all the jobs. I am currently being recruited for several jobs now. And I tell people, you know who I am, right? And so when there are things that are not well, I'm going to say that they are not well. And if I'm in a position to change them, I'm going to change them. And if I'm not, I'm going to text Tammy and I'm going to say, hey, Tammy, did you know that this was going on? You sure? Okay, I'm going to watch Tammy change that. And so, it's about being who you are authentically and being okay with the fact that God got me. I may not need this job because if I can't say what I want to say and if I can't do the things that I want to do, this isn't the space where I need to be. And so I would happily pack my little bag up and go and find me somewhere else. And I've never been unemployed. Not one single day of my 8-year legal career.
I will say really quickly that what Attorney Shaw is saying there goes back to what Lori shared earlier in the last panel, is that you got to have a tribe too. Most of us on this panel, on the last panel, on the upcoming panel, I see Shay in the chat right now. We all have a network, where we can reach out. When I was running for mayor, I see Just Jane and we just be like, girl, And so I think that if you feel you're in a position that you can't speak out, don't hold it in all day. Make sure you got your kitchen cabinet, your crew, your sisters, your people, whatever. I got several group chats that run from 6 a.m. till 3 a.m. And social media and other things, but I think that also the good thing is we are in a different time, not a different time, but people are more outspoken. And generally, like, there are some roles that you're going to get that, Amber, while you type in text, you're not muted, sweetheart. But but I think that we are in a time where I feel like you can address some of the racism that not our family, that like my mother could not have necessarily addressed when she was in corporate in the 80s, right? And so Amber left. I hope that's so that's my hope. I got sidetracked, but my hope is that, to the younger people who are listening to us, again, we've earned some of our stripes at this point. And people, to Carlos's point, if you offer me a job, you're going to know who I am, right? But if you're just starting out, don't bury your heart and soul so early. Try to stay true to yourself and find your cohort of friends and family so that if you can't speak your mind at work, you can still find a release elsewhere and commit to programs like MULYP or NAACP or Black Lives Matter so that you can do that work elsewhere.
Yeah, Amber, she's back. I was about to
I
explain
didn't leave. I think
coins.
the
And
feds was tracking my computer and they dropped me off.
I had to finish that sentence.
Don't let them get you, Amber. They coming for everybody. Don't let them get you.
I'm a little nervous. You know? No,
Amber, my question actually is to you next, to be quite honest. But when I said coins, that's about how much leverage do I have in this workplace to move some things? And if I charge up every hill, will I be able to do it depending upon the choices that I make? We got about 6 minutes, and I wanted to shift the conversation just a bit and talk about something a little bit more political. There's a lot of talk now within the Black community about our supposed allegiance and loyalties to the Democratic Party, and specifically along with Black women. What is the argument, or is there one, for why we should continue to be aligned with the Democratic Party, or are we in an environment where we need to look elsewhere?
I just talked, but I'll just be quick as I can. I don't know what that word means, but I don't have allegiance to the Democratic Party. I'm a democratically elected commissioner who's witnessed in 2 years the blue wave be very light blue and extremely disappointed. I believe that there's a lot. I'm not committed to, I don't see the path for a 3-party system on the federal level. But what I do believe is that things like, for 2 years, we've had our Black Millennial Convention here in Memphis to represent the entire South. Out of that has grown our Black Party, which is focused on pushing not just the Democratic Party, but all political operatives on being more, I don't even want to use the word inclusive, but there's an acquiescence that Democrats are refusing to do right now. Joe Biden is pretty much president-elect at this point, and his first words the day after the election were, "Let's turn down the temperature." And to me, that was a slap in the face of the organizing and the activism that got him to the presidential elect. It was tone deaf. And so I said I'd be quick. I know we're running out of time. Chat's popping. And I just feel like we have to hold the Democratic Party accountable. We have given them, as Amber called it, a lot of free labor as Black women. They have not yet returned them coins.
Mm-hmm. I definitely want to comment on this. So I saw those same tweets that Tammy is talking about, and I think it was some bullshit. And I feel like he had the balls to say that because he felt like we won't clap back at him. But the very moment they announced him as the president-elect, we have already prepared for the organizing and the on-the-ground work to hold him accountable and to push past the needle, because those policies were okay. But I'm going for Black liberation, so I need him to go a little bit higher, and we're going to hold him accountable to that. And I think that the issue in the past was you didn't have, you had Black women that were going to hold him accountable, of course, but you didn't have the push as hard as it is right now to hold him accountable. And if I got to be in D.C. every day outside the White House, I'm being D.C. outside every day, pushing him to go and act right. Because the whole issue with even electing him and making sure that we have him in office is contingent on him actually achieving the things that he's saying he's going to do, which is also the exact reason why I sit in the elected positions that I sit in. Because one, if I didn't run, there wouldn't be a Black woman. I'm the only Black person and woman on our Shelby County Young Dems board. I sit on the board by myself with Black men. If I had not ran, there will be no Black women or women representation at all. I sit as the chair of our women's caucus and the vice chair of our national caucus that has no Black exec members or women. So I'm always going to enter myself into those rooms, because without me, they wouldn't be pushing the activism they're pushing right now. Shelby County Young Dems wouldn't be pushing the activism they're pushing right now. I'm in Atlanta right now because our TNYD pushed activism and coming out here to help cure these ballots. And that was me who pushed that. So you have to put yourself in those positions until we get exactly what we want. I might want a different party, yeah, but until I get that, I'm going to jump into this one that exists and I'm going to shake some shit up.
Mm-hmm.
And before we leave, yeah,
go ahead.
That's true. And I wholeheartedly agree with what Amber said. You have to be there. You have to be involved. You have to take some people. And before we're cut off, I just want to bring up the fact that there's an election coming up in 2022, where a lot of the local and state offices And please just take a look at it. You're talking about the parties. As a judge, I have to be independent. And and that cat's tail walked by right on time, because see, a lot of folks, I'm not going to say that, but please look at the elected officials that are already elected. Don't just go on a name. Look at, do they speak up when there's an injustice? Are they silent, or are they willing to step out there and say that's an injustice, that's not right? Make sure their beliefs and values are aligned with yours. But just start preparing. And if you're thinking about running for office, reach out to me, reach out to Commissioner Sawyer. I've been elected 5 times in spite of people trying to, um, and people, and oftentimes it's people that look like me that try to put a stumbling block in the way, but God and but the people, because I'm for the people. And when you're for the people and you don't forget your base, you can be elected 5 times. But just know that there's an election coming up. Look at the people. And just because they Black, everybody ain't at the picnic and what is it? Skin folk ain't kin folk all the time. So don't just vote because they Black. Vote because they right and want to do the right thing. But know there's an election coming up and find folks. And that's for the young people, especially Commissioner Sawyer, Attorney Shaw. I don't know if I've given you my robe at some time and let you try it on. You know, it's time for you all to run for these offices who aren't afraid to speak up and make a difference, you know, and who tell their truth. We need that. You were talking about juvenile court, you know, we need those voices. We need that in these places that impact in the legislative, the judicial. Those races are coming up. So just get ready. Get ready.
Judge Chandler, thank you for those words. We are actually a minute over time, so I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to have their final say, because the next panel, we need to push them up out of this chat and get them into the room, and they're quite active. Ladies, thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution. Also, thank you for what it is that you have to actually endure, being elected officials, being very front-facing in some extremely turbulent positions. I think sometimes I personally, can't speak for everyone, take for granted what it is that you go through, not only professionally, but I'm also sure emotionally and mentally, just to do what you do and get up every morning. So I am grateful for that and always looking forward to what it is you'll do next. And so we'll take this time now to hear your final words for this panel. I wish you well on your endeavors, Judge Chandler. 5 times elected. I love that. Congratulations to all of you. So we will start with Attorney Shaw and then work our way around.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much, Memphis Urban League. This has been good. The first session was good. This session has been good. I definitely wanted to take just a second to answer the last question. And it is, again, Black women opening our mouths. The Democratic Party owes us. The Democratic Party owes us. And when you owe somebody, you have to pay them. And when they don't pay you, you have to repossess. And that's it. We have to start saying, hey, you owe us something. We have to start requiring people to give us what we are owed. And when it comes to protecting Black women, we have to start advocating for ourselves and each other, and making sure that we are contacting our elected officials. We are giving them ideas about legislation when we see things and we know things. It's about educating our communities about systems so that they can protect themselves, and not asking people to guide us and to help us, but to give us the resources, because we can do it. We can do all the work on our own. All we need is for people to educate us on how to get the work done. And so I look forward to the continued work. I look forward to working with everyone on this panel. I look forward to continue to work with everyone on this panel and the previous panels, because we're doing it. And like Judge Chandler said, I believe in 2022, y'all. I believe that in Memphis, 2022 is going to look real, real different than what we've ever seen before. But it takes all of us organizing. It takes all of us being on somewhat of the same page, or at least in the same book. So that's all for me. Bye, y'all.
Amber, you're right below me, so we'll go with you next.
Okay, cool. I definitely think this was much so needed. I love doing panels with fellow Black people because I don't like having to feel like I'm educating white people, so I'm not into those. Um, my only final thoughts are definitely let me know if y'all want to do this again. I have a podcast and a blog. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Law According to Amber. I just dropped a few episodes about the Breonna Taylor juror case. I do mostly like analysis of Supreme Court cases, or just my own thoughts in general, which is why it's called The Law According to Amber. Also, feel free to check out my website, ambersherman.com. I have merch that's all geared towards either famous quotes that I say or AS for Afro, which is my natural hair, like appreciation type of thing, because I feel like we don't see enough Black women who have regular 4C, 4B curls. I'm not mixed. I don't have loose curls. Like my Afro looks like this every day. And I want to support other Black women whose hair looks like this too. And I definitely think that this has been great. I'll be in the chat for the next group of people.
I'll go so that the Honorable Judge Jane Chandler can have the last word. First of all, I started to get a little emotional because we don't readily have Black women either in the roles before us or who are willing to mentor and be there for us. And you've done that, and I appreciate that, Cheryl, as well. And for me, when I ran for mayor last year, one of the things that made me the saddest was the silence of Black women. Not that anyone had to vote for me, but the outreach when things got hard and when people saw Black women attacked. And we often find ourselves struggling with how to show up for each other. And what this gave me was hope. That regardless of where we fall politically, regardless of who we support in an election, regardless of who we're related to, that we see each other's beauty and strength and can show up for each other. And that needs to continue. I think our biggest asset as Black women is our relationships with other Black women. For as long as we've been in this country and before, we've had to create families out of our relationships with each other. And so I hope that Black women in Memphis continue to grow closer and continue to grow stronger and support each other and do the work that we know our communities need. And I think this is just a big part of that. And so just for everyone listening, I just want to echo 2022. Judge Jane wouldn't say it, but we got to get this woman out of the DA seat. So please, let's get ready to do this. We need to wake up tomorrow and be on this DA's race. And there's a whole lot of other races, and start having those conversations now. We're going to need a new chair of the Democratic Party, and we're going to need all of the county seats are pretty much going to be up for election. And so just get ready, make your plan, and don't let anybody tell you it's not your time. I run for office 4 times, won twice, and every time someone told me to have a seat. Every time. And I'm one of the largest fundraisers in this county. That's my humble brag. Take care.
And let me thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk. And piggybacking on what Tammy just said, 2022, that's so very important. Don't wait until 2022. Start now, look at the races, start looking at who your elected officials are. And when I ran for judge the first time, I was 35 years old. I was told I was too young. I didn't have enough experience, that I should wait until I was older. And I was told that by a lot of the local Black leaders and ministers. And I reminded them of the letter from a Birmingham jail cell that Dr. Martin Luther King penned. Waiting almost always equates to never. So why wait? And they couldn't give me a reason to wait. They told me I wouldn't be elected. But I was the first time I ran at 35, 3 years out of law school, a year with my Tennessee license. If you believe you can, then do it. How do we protect Black women? We support one another. That's how we protect each other. Audre Lorde, your silence will not protect you. Understand that. And once you understand that your silence will not protect you and that it's better to speak, then you should speak up. So I encourage Black women to come together and speak up for one another. And there are lots of opportunities. Don't be content with being the only one, because when you're the only one, you are not protected. And thank goodness, that's why I let Attorney Carlissa Shaw and other attorneys who come in put on my robe, because I don't want Division 3 to stop with me. I want other like-minded people to run for positions and try to make a difference in the lives of people. That's how you protect one another. So thank you again for having me along with other ladies, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Thank you, Judge Chandler. Have a good evening. All right. So, so I put in the chat, both of these panels have been extremely inspiring. I hate that I can't ask my own personal questions, but we're going to move into the last and final one. So I will bring up three women now who are community activists. Again, if there are some name preferences that you like, please let me know when you get here. So let's call them up now. So first we have Shahida Jones, community organizer and activist. We have Jasmine Tasaki. I'm pretty sure I may have gotten that wrong, Jasmine. I'm so sorry. Executive Director and CEO of We Care Tennessee. And then Latricia Adams, founder and president of Black Millennials for Flint. So a couple of things before we get started. It's 7:25 on a Friday night, and I'm sure usually all of us are doing different things that may not look like sitting on a panel and having a talk real professional. Ashley has not said anything in the chat, and I've seen some of the things that have happened in the chat. So I will say, because this is all family, just be who you are, unless Ashley pulls us back. But we're gonna, get into a couple of things. I want to start with a question that has come up in the last conversation, right? There were some names that we saw it come through in the chat, and some references to what has to happen in 2022. And then more specifically with the DA's office. And so really want to hear from you. What are the implications for Black women in our communities if we are not able to get the right person in that role in the city of Memphis?
So I can speak from a really different perspective, and I'm excited to hear Shay's response. But from an education perspective, so besides my work with working in environmental justice, I'm an educator by trade. The amount of just criminalizing poverty and just the struggles of Black women, particularly as it relates to truancy, is just sick. There is a complete lack of empathy and funding and resources and all the things that are needed to address the issue with our children making it back and forth to school. In a previous panel, someone talked about like the stroke transportation in the city and in the county, and it's really a pervasive issue. It's not raised often enough. I want to champion a school board member. Board member Stephanie Love has gone in on that individual for just the over policing and the robbing of the childhood of our children. And just really resonates with me. It's a whole host of things that's problematic with this individual that impacts Black women, our children. But that's just something personally that just seeing it day by day and being in this work with our young people, with our families, it's got to stop. So I'll just leave it at that.
I'll join in and say that for me, I think some of the implications, or not necessarily the implications, I think that when I think about it, I think about our community in the totality, because whatever affects Black women affects our complete community. So just thinking about how drugs will be criminalized in the future, sex crimes will be criminalized in the future, how we parent our children will be controlled by situations that are beyond our control because of the system. So I kind of feel like whoever we put in that place, the system itself is already tainted. So, it's going to be a hard job for whoever to do it, but we will suffer as Black women and as Black people because all the issues affect us and the system is designed to oppress us. So we will suffer on every end.
Hey y'all. I think so. I think a lot of what both of you guys just said. One, I think for me, it's a kind of weird question, just because I don't think that one identifies as abolitionist. So I don't believe that prisons, mass incarceration, policing is the answer. And so for me, it's like, so therefore there will never be a perfect person or in that position of enforcing criminalization on our people. So I just want to say that. The second thing though is I think that to Jasmine's point is the way we are affected is that, I mean, as Black women, we are the glue that holds the community together. So these are our children, these are our mothers, our brothers, our sons that are being impacted by the criminalization, the increased criminalization of things that are not causing hurt or harm. So most folks will agree, where we tend to get caught up on the abolitionist things, folks want to say, ask about violent crime. But most of the reasons folks are being given these long and drastic sentences are not violent crimes, right? So we're not even really having it in the context of how it happens. And so the DA directly affects that. I also think particularly this DA has a very, very long history of doing, even within the context, with all of the legal room that this DA has in this system that is already slanted, has such a long history of minimizing folks' rights and over prosecuting. And so I think particularly this race is important because it's a demand that both in every corner, from the courtrooms to the streets, that folks are in agreement that this person has not served us well. And so I think it's personal for a lot of folks.
I wanted to add one more part. Oops, excuse me. I wanted to add one more part really quickly. Something else that is not taken into consideration when thinking about the AG is the environmental justice issues that are pervasive. So, for example, I'm going to talk about lead because that's my platform, and how lead has just been such a pervasive neurotoxin in Black communities, and how there is a correlation between criminality, mental health issues with lead exposure. We pride ourselves in Memphis about on an aquifer, but don't nobody care about that when the infrastructure is crumbling. When we have lead service pipelines all through North Memphis, Orange Mound, South Memphis, everywhere that you see Black people. So I also think it goes back to what I talked about, like with needing the investment in resources that will actually help to mitigate some of the issues that we see as far as crime, as far as and just in terms of just our social determinants of health. Also think needs to be taken into consideration, and our lens should be very intersectional in nature. I had to.
No, that was great. Thank you. I wrote down the issues about the aquifer because I tend to forget that myself. I do want to circle back to you, Shay. I'm sorry I'm pointing because you're up there on the screen, but you mentioned abolition, right? The deconstructing of systems. Latricia just talked about the aquifer. Jasmine brought up sex crimes and things of that nature. When we think about advocacy and the power of Black women in organizing, are there like some priority issues or things that we really need to focus on, right? Like we all know these things are happening, different things, but if you could think of maybe one or two things that if you really want to organize Black women around, what are those things and how can we advocate for change?
Okay. Well, Jasmine, you can go if you're ready. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Yeah, I think that question is a good question, but I think that as Black women and as Black people and as humans, we all have different experiences and we all have different stories, right? And I think that what happens is oftentimes in organizing, people organize what they believe in and they find people that can support that, but people are telling other people's stories and people are telling other narratives about experiences that are not their own. So for me, I would implore Black women and Black people to engage in what they feel passionate about and where they see a gap at, not just joining on to movement because we know we're magical, right? And we know we got power. So we have to find our own stories and our own agendas to create movement, right? And then we can find the intersections in those movements, and that's how we can get together and push bigger movements. But but personally, if I was to say something, I was just if I was given that task, I would say that specifically in the Black community in Memphis, among women, HIV is an unspoken experience here for Black women. And, a lot of grant funding does not go to speaking to Black women about this epidemic. And it's something that affects Black women disproportionately. It largely in Memphis, right? All across the South, but largely in Memphis. So if I was going to just organize, that would be what I would organize. But I have sense as an organizer to know I would have to find people that are connected to that struggle or that are impacted by the epidemic, right? And I think for my ultimate answer, I would say we as Black women have to advocate for what we believe in and tell our own narratives. And then we have to nurture other advocates, and we have to nurture other women in a way that they can find that oomph about themselves to tell their story, right? And that will connect them to other people in their movement.
Yeah, for me, it's
I talk about these four aspects of the movement. Is there an echo on my? Can you hear me? Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, let's go ahead with you, Shade, and we'll come back to Latricia because I think she's on the lag too.
Okay.
All right.
So what? So for me, the question was like it was both. It's another one of those things that's like a weird question. One, I think that there is a difference between. I want to say that I hear a lot of folks use the terms organizer, activism, and advocacy, and all those aren't the same things. And so I think that's an important distinction to make about what the difference is between those things. That being said, I also think that we tend to think about things in such a vacuum, and scarcity politics, scarcity mindset makes us think that we can only ask for so much. So the answer to that question for me is we would organize folks in to stop the war on Black folks, right? And for liberation for Black folks. So those are my two things. And everything and anything that falls under that umbrella that you are passionate about that moves forth an agenda that gets us there is something that we should be concentrating on. And so I think that it's important that when we think about our movements, right? So Charlene Carruthers, who started BYP 100, talks about radical Black imagination. Angela Davis talks about that. And I think that's definitely, Octavia Butler talks about that, right? So we talk about how important it is to be able to vision a world that's outside of the current confines and paradigms. And so that means that we should never be trying to reel ourselves in to what is possible, but widening the gap on what we think is possible, because the more we think, the more we're likely to move as if it is possible. So for me, as long as we keep trying to narrow liberation down, narrow how we end this war on Black people down, we'll always be spinning our tails because we can't limit that.
I'm like, am I off mute now? And my computer's behaving appropriately? Ooh, just haters. But what I was going to share was it's really a good segue to what Shay talked about. So I think, and I'm going to take it to church, just, I'm a Southerner. I was raised in the church. You got to know your ministry. I think sometimes we kind of step outside of our ministry and do what God sent you to do. Like, if you know that that's not your talent, get out of the way, and really support each other. We'll cultivate and like what your given talents are to contribute to this movement. So I think about like 4 categories that like we operate in any movement. I think about the elected official. Everybody can't run for office. That's not everybody's ministry. I think the community organizer. If you're not a trusted person in the community, you don't need to be the pinpoint person trying to get people to rally around. Like if folks don't like you, you know, and then you have to think about the activists, right? So when you think about, it's a difference between activism and being an advocate. When you like, I'm an advocate for like domestic violence, right? Like I'm going to contribute to anything to dismantle any of the things associated with that, but I'm not necessarily setting my platform up where all of my time is dedicated to that, and that's okay. And the last part is around boardrooms. So I think a lot of times when we think about boardrooms, I think about Whitney M. Young, for example, where during his time, he was thought to be a sellout. Y'all, we got to have Black people in the boardroom. If we want money to go towards these programs and these resources, we have to have somebody that's negotiating on our behalf. Right? So we all have to work in concert together and stop attacking people for fulfilling their ministry and kind of, just fulfilling like what our role is in this war, because it is a war, and you're not going to get rid of this war until you leave this earth. So I just wanted to put that point in there where just to know your ministry, refine your ministry, and then seek that other talent, other people, so that you can build a legacy to ensure that we don't end up going backwards, but we're steady moving.
I'm gonna go with steady moving forward on the end of that. Yes, come on, Jasmine.
I just want to add to that. Both of them are so right. I love both of them anyway, so you're gonna get a lot of that. But like real talk, we have to not only, how people say you have to see it for yourself, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to know you're worth it. We also have to see it in our sisters and brothers, and we also have to know that they are worth it for the positions that they are called to be in as well, right? That's how we can get together and do things, is if we trust people to do their work and trust people to do what they call organizing or what they call leadership, right? So to Shay's point, right, there's different roles in what we call the work. Ultimately, this is all the work that we do, right? But there are different roles, but we have to trust people's leadership, specifically trust other Black women's leadership, because oftentimes we Black women want people to trust our leadership, but we don't trust our sisters when they come in to lead us.
It's a great point. I certainly don't want to be disrespectful of the work, right? And I think oftentimes, so 3 words you guys have talked about: organize, activism, advocacy. And I feel like sometimes there's a sentiment that those things are easy to do, that anyone can just get out there and do it. And so I'd love to sort of have a conversation about, the point which is made is these things are different. What is it to be an organizer? What is it to be an activism? What is it to be an advocate? And how are they different?
I wanted to just speak to the term activism. So with activism, it comes with a sense of privilege. So I think about some of the work that I have done before, like talking to, like, even right now with me being on this panel, having a nonprofit that's based on environmental justice and water in schools. It gets scary. Sometimes you have to risk it all for the movement, like for the culture. And I think that it's really important for us to understand that with some aspects of activism there is privilege. And it goes back to what I said earlier about people needed to know their roles and their ministry, but also like not policing the way that people show up for Black liberation. We all play different roles. And I think that it's important that once you do know your role in the movement, that we work collectively to cultivate what those talents are, and then like build upon that and establish a leadership pipeline and stop telling people when you become an elder that it's not your time.
Okay. So I think about those things in three different ways, like three different things. I think about activism is really about the power of me, myself. I have been activated to do a thing. I feel passionately about a thing. I am moved to do a thing. Advocacy, I see as a more formal, often organization-based, narrative-driven strategy for how you speak out or support around an issue. And to me, organizing is about bringing folks together to achieve an action or common goal of a thing. And so advocacy doesn't really have to increase awareness type of thing, right? And they're pushing for different things, but you often don't see advocacy kind of leave that niche. And then, activism, an activist can be an organizer, but an organizer, but being an activist doesn't make you an organizer, right? Like you have to, there's I think a strategy. That's where we see more than just thinking about what you want. It's the collective governance of a thing, collective governance of an organization, and bringing forth one united voice to attack an issue. And I think the reason that becomes important is because much like we saw with Stacey Abrams' campaign, much like we see with how Georgia gets flipped, right, is that often we take the work of organizers who have been working on the ground over and over and over and over and over again, and we try to limit it to advocacy, right? Or we attempt to say that somebody who's been an activist who may or may not have been, who might have just been personally motivated by a thing and might be really passionate, but also, again, I'm not trying to shit on Ice Cube or whatever, but like there's a reason, like the conversation about staying in your lane came out of that. And I think about the fact that often Stacey wasn't given credit for being a strategist, right? Who in her history of this work, the grassroots organizer had been working for her, was left out to kind of minimize her to like this kind of singular person or persona. And I think the last thing that I wanted to say was just that I think that I do think that anybody is welcome to any of these roles. I don't think that it means that if you chose to be an activist, or you chose to do this, or you chose to do this, that you can't. But I think you have to respect the type of work that is different. I think you have to respect that there might be people or work that is ongoing, and just like anything else, just because you feel passionately about a thing, just because it's something that you want to do, doesn't mean you've done the work to understand how you might impact it. And often, specifically in liberation, social justice type work, what happens is the way the system works is to pit the new activists against each other. So if they're moving into work that then outshines or changes the directory and trajectory of the work that folks have been doing on the ground, there's a little mismatch that has to happen. I think we all have to be willing to think about power differently in that aspect and how we come together to do that.
For me, I agree with what both of them said. I just would like to add, I think that where the confusion comes in, like where people blur these, are the scarcity of Black activists, or the scarcity of Black nonprofits, or the scarcity of Black advocates, right, who are truly connected to their work. Because we all, a lot of times in this sector, we start off in one role and we kind of go into another role because of lack of support, right? And then we're in these roles, and we inherently, as Black women, specifically Black women, we do it. We take on everybody else's work. And before you know it, we're doing so many things, and those little Black girls or those little Black boys or our peers are looking at us, and they think, okay, that's what activism looks like. Well, they don't know that we've looped in the advocacy part because we needed that piece for support, right? But I think that the other part is, like they said, just knowing, your lane and your role, but also knowing that each one does complement the other when done right.
So again, like the other panels, we probably could stay all night here. So much to learn about it. Unfortunately, we have like 2 minutes left, and that's not enough time. What I'd love to do, though, is for closeout to have each of you maybe share something that you're passionate about that we need to know about. Environmental racism, certainly, you don't have to share that, but I constantly do forget about that as well. So would love to close out there. Before we close out, though, ladies, thank you, as I've been so grateful with everyone else for the work that you do. Some of you, I'm very much aware, sort of on the outskirts of what you do, and sort of watch and pay attention. And thank you for the sacrifice that you make on behalf of just people in general. And thank you for being on this panel. Jasmine, I'm going to start with you because your nails are wonderful and I just like to see them. So for your closeout, just share something you're passionate about and something that you feel like we would need to know. And then good night.
I would like to first thank the Memphis Urban League of Young Professionals for inviting me to be a part. I served my time. I know that sounds bad. I served my time as the chair of health literacy and advocacy. And just would like to say that this represents what I would like for us as Black women to remember. Transgender women are women. We are sisters. We are Black women, and we deserve to be heard, and our voice should be lifted and supported just as all the other women are supported in the Black community. And I honor that that is happening now, but I think that it's something that I would really feel bad if I got off this call and didn't say. There's so many intersections with the struggles that we have as women, and us finding those intersections and building collective power off of that and making large moves for the community of women as a whole is how we can move forward. I'm honored and want to thank Shay, Cheryl, and Latricia. I have had a great time, and I hope to see you all in person soon. And we hope Biden wins, right? Good night.
Shay, you're right next to me now.
All right. And so Jasmine always be dope. I think the things that I wanted to say were one, I think that it is important that we think about how we protect each other and how we want to build from this moment. I think it's important that we think about that in all the intersections that include gender, but also specifically in Memphis class. And so I think about how often that we, when we sit in these rooms, it does not look reflective of the actual demographics class-wise of Memphis. And a lot of us take up a lot of seats, and a lot of us do what we talk about is like, because we grew up poor, we still maintain that. But you're not, right? You're not. And so what does the demographic look like to include the women that we champion, like it was mentioned earlier about Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B, which, but I feel like, what does it mean to have those women that represent that demographic, that hood social cachet that we bring forth all the time in these spaces, right? Because we still are carrying a lot of bias in class space. And I think that that's important to not acknowledge that, who gets left behind in a lot of the work, especially once we start entering those rooms, are other Black women that look like us too. And then I think I just want to highlight that the other thing is that I think it's that as we talk about what that looks like, that we also then talk about collective power and decision making, not just in government, but I also think about that in forms of how we form coalitions, how we do our work on the ground, and how we are thinking about the shifts in the system we need to do. If we don't practice it, then how are we going to know? And so what I've seen happen a lot is people moving in power and then moving the way that they've been shown without identifying that that's a white supremacist way. And so how do we start breaking it down for each other? And then last thing, just white supremacy ain't just all about white people. We all internalize anti-Blackness. We all internalize it. We're all capable of that. We're all raised in these same systems. So we are all anti-Black. We are all transphobic, homophobic, all of these things, right? It doesn't matter. Like that's how we were raised. So how are we really doing the work internally to hold ourselves accountable? And then how does that look in our practice? How does that look in who we reach out to, who we build relationships with, not just who we have on panels, not just who we bring out for personal benefit, but like in our relationships, what relationships and communities do we actually have to reflect the values and principles that we claim? And that's it.
All right. I do have a lag, so I apologize to everybody that's watching. Don't think that I'm crazy. But the last thing that I would like to say, and I didn't get to touch on a bit, but we really need to be cognizant, especially as Black women, with the state of our environment. I know there's been a lot of Black women behind the scenes trust. I'm one of them that really push for climate to be a topic of discussion. If you are a religious person, Revelations told us that the world was going to end by fire, and we're literally looking at that. But specifically with Black women and the intersection of environmental justice and maternal health, is very important for us to hold our physicians and health providers accountable, not just if we are currently pregnant, but just with our reproductive system in general. With climate changes, with extreme weather, those things impact us from a reproductive perspective. As I mentioned earlier with lead, you should definitely, even as an adult, get lead screenings, especially if you are looking to conceive, if you are exposed to lead, even if you didn't have an impact in your childhood, once you are pregnant, if you had any lead that was in your body, it's deposited in bones. And then once you are pregnant, it's released back out from your bones and goes into your bloodstream and can go to your baby. So it's really important for Black women to be aware of all of the environmental hazards that are pervasive to Black womanhood. So make sure, if you want to learn more facts about how EJ or environmental justice impacts Black women, follow my nonprofit at Black Millennials for Flint, like the number 4. And you can visit our website at www.blackmillennialsforflint.org. There's so much out there that we need to be protecting ourselves about with environmental justice and Black womanhood. Thank you so much, YP. This was excellent.
All right, it's been a wonderful evening. Ashley, will hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you to all of our participants. Y'all, this was amazing. The power of Black women displayed tonight was indescribable. My heart is truly full. Thank you to each of you for coming together as Black queens in support of and standing up for the Protect Black Women movement. This was only the beginning. Memphis Urban League Young Professionals will continue to provide platforms such as this around protecting Black women beyond this weekend. So please stay tuned and connected with us through social media. That's MEMULYP on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also check out our website, www.memphisulYP.org, to get more information about the movement and how to join. Memphis Urban League Young Professionals is here to empower the community and change lives, and it's a great organization to get involved with, to truly realize and see the power that you have in the community. Again, thank you to all of you who came together to create this Black woman magic tonight, and to you for joining in on the conversation with us. We will continue to protect Black women, the conversation tonight at Sugar Shack, who is one of our sponsors and who's offering free admission and discount on orders tonight. Thank you to our other sponsors, the Cairo Place, Verizon, Emmanuel Consulting, Your Inner Yogi, Mocha Defense, which is a Black-owned protective gear company offering a special discount for our Protect Black Women Weekend on self-defense gear. So if you need self-defense gear, check out Mocha Defense and use the promo code MULYP for this weekend. Our Protect Black Women Weekend continues tomorrow with the Jiu-Jitsu self-defense class, and then Sunday with virtual yoga and a members-only event at Top Gun. So check out our website for more information and to sign up and RSVP for those events. There was a comment in the chat earlier on Facebook that said, Black women are maximizers. We take little and make much. And that just spoke volumes to me. Black women can do anything. We have proven that time and time again. Our panelists tonight have proven that in their various fields. And I want to encourage each of you to tuned in to wear your crown and stay encouraged and know that you really can do anything. Know that you have a community here for you. And if you're not already connected to a safe space, there's a space here for you here in Memphis Urban League Young Professionals. We are here to empower, build, and protect you. Again, thank you all for tuning in to tonight's event.